After Trump, and if they can get Trump, it means they can get you, they can get me, they can get all of us. He is standing in the way, and that can sound like a campaign slogan, but it's very true.
Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives.
Now, for the very first time in American history, a sitting president's DOJ has indicted his top political rival ahead of a presidential campaign.
When they indicted me for nothing, I said, now the gloves are off. Now we have to say if I can see the crook.
I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, can you feel it coming in the air tonight?
Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives.
Oh Lord.
If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Well, you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. Well, I was there and I saw what you did. I saw it with my own two eyes. So you can wipe off that grin. I know where you've been. It's all been a pack of lies.
If you have a problem with someone, you have to go after them. And it's not necessarily to teach that person a lesson. It's to teach all of the people that are watching a lesson.
The last time we ever met. But I know the reason why you keep your silence.
When we get back in the White House, I will totally obliterate the deep state.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. So stranger to you and me. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord.
When we get back power, I don't really want to have peace with these people who did this to us and are continuing to do this to us. We have to turn the tables on them, give them a dose of their own medicine, and then we can even the playing field, and then we can discuss unity.
Everybody, this is Patriot Underground here with a very important message. I don't know if you folks know this, but the FDA tried to reclassify NMN as a prescription drug, but Black Forest and the Natural Products Association fought back and won. NMN is a natural precursor to NAD+, and a Harvard study found it can help reduce weight, cholesterol, and blood pressure. Here is Dr. Andrew Huberman explaining why. Check this out.
We were talking, I think last time we spoke about supplementation as it relates to, metabolic pathways. And one thing I've been tracking pretty closely is this whole, the NMN thing has now taken a
I was going to bring that up before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
So let's explain NMN for people. It's a precursor for NAD+.
Right. NAD is critical to energy production in all cells, vital. And levels of NAD tend to go down as we age. It's an absolute requirement for cellular health in life. You need it. Some years ago, as David Sinclair came on this podcast and discussed that his laboratory is a tenured professor of genetics, Harvard Medical School, and other laboratories are starting to explore stimulating the NAD pathway as a tool for extending lifespan. You can't just take NAD, or you can, but it doesn't get into cells very easily. There are basically two ways that you can tickle this pathway, increase NAD. One is to take NMN. NMN could soon be a prescription drug. that you can only get with a prescription. And then I think Metro International Biotech will likely hold the patent. I will say with NMN, a couple of things happened. First of all, energy, my recovery from workouts, much better. I had to take it early day because it was giving me a lot of energy. I did notice like my hair and nails growing at a ridiculous rate. And then I came off it just as a control experiment, slowed down again. So it was really interesting. I think there's something there in cellular growth pathways.
Interesting.
Like he was saying, you get improved muscle growth, you get better recovery. Your nail and hair grows in faster, just as one of the byproducts, because of the cellular regeneration and healing.
So there you have it, folks. They tried once and lost, but this fight is not over. So the best thing that you can do is to stock up now. Now, Black Forest got in touch with me, and even though they ended their 4th of July promo, for my audience, they are going to extend it for 48 hours only. Buy one, get one free store-wide, plus you get a free bottle of NMN with every order. 3 bottles, folks, for the price of 1. That is a deal you simply cannot beat. But it is only available for 48 hours using the link below, not on their site. And once it's gone, the window closes. So check out the link in the description of the video and the pinned comment. And I promise you, folks, you will not be disappointed. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Patriot out. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is August 4th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And once again, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome my good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi, back to the show for another, what I hope is going to be a very comprehensive geopolitical, domestic, perhaps even financial update. We're going to get into a lot of different topics. Rick is going to share all of his knowledge, all of his insights and analysis with the audience. And I know everybody has been looking forward to this episode, including me. I always love sitting down with you and having a chat. We always say we never know quite where it's going to go, but it ends up being a great conversation. So welcome back. How's everything going down there in the land of Oz, my good man?
Absolutely outstanding, Patriot. Thanks for having me back. It's a chilly 4 degrees here in Oz. It's early in the morning. The rubbish, the trash cans have just been taken away. And yeah, we'll talk about everything tonight. And if I run out of things to say, I'll share my recipe for ragu in bianco alla bolognese, which the kids love when I make that in a calzone. So there you go. We've got everything for everybody tonight.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Well, obviously, there's a lot going on, and certainly it's difficult to pinpoint where exactly to begin. So what I like to do to set the table for our discussion is to just sort of ask you, I have a lot of different subjects that I want to touch upon, but considering the 40,000 foot view right now, always a good place to start, because that seems to be where we end up. You know, we start with the big picture, we get into some of the particulars of what's been happening in the world, and we usually round it out by coming full circle and talking about the perspective that all of us should be having on the progress, the overall trajectory of the operation, as I often refer to it. So why don't you share some thoughts? Since the last time we spoke, there have been a lot of things that have happened. Of course, we had Fauci pleading the Fifth Amendment 111 times during that political theater on Capitol Hill. We also heard that Trump, in the aftermath of that, said that he at least indicated that he was going to honor the pardon that, quote unquote, Biden bestowed upon Fauci on his way out the door, despite the auto pen. And there have been certainly a lot of things happening geopolitically over in Iran, the war that seems to start and stop multiple times, sometimes within a day. We've got that going on geopolitically. We also had the fires in Spokane, Washington. So we're going to touch upon all of these different things. Rick is also going to give us a little bit of a presentation, a couple of slides talking about the rebirth of a great nation. We're going to discuss the process toward justice and a lot of different things. So, Rick, let me pass it over to you and just give us, kind of paint a picture for us of where we're at right now, what you're focusing on, what some of the big events that have transpired have kind of translated into in terms of your understanding of the progress of the operation.
Sure. This is a good time to be alive. The overwhelming emotion on the planet right now is one of frustration, anger, and that's predicated by things like Fauci's interview, which upset a lot of people. The on-again, off-again activities in Iran and the Straits of Hormuz. Is it over? Is it real? Is it finished? Are the white hats in charge? Are the black hats still in charge? Why are things still going on? King Mohammed VI of Morocco naming a stretch of highway the Donald J. Trump Road, and then all of a sudden they find out that this little bit at the end of Morocco is actually a bit straighter, and the Moroccans have landed there and are causing grief, and the Spaniards, the Spanish government's doing 2/3 of 5/8, so not very much to do anything about it. The Italians are now saying we're going to shut the borders with them because they're so what's happening is a lot of stuff is now bubbling to the surface, and even at the lower level, some of the really good stuff is happening. DJT turning up to a manufacturing facility, and the numbers are just phenomenal in terms of the US domestic capacity industry is growing. And so there's a lot of little pictures. Some are big, some are small, some are good, some are bad, some are doubtful, some are certain. And it's all now bubbling to the surface because, as we've said for a long time, there are many demographic and psychographic groups that have to receive a message in a very particular way. Some people are fascinated on a particular subject. Some people are fascinated about something else. And the White Hats have to cover all those bases. So if it seems like it's all over the place, you're right. It is all over the place because, as I said, there are many, many different groups that need to be communicated with in order to bring them along to where they need to be. Now, that doesn't mean we're getting the truth. We're never going to get the truth because this is a war. And if we can work it out, so can the bad guys. And by bad guys, we're talking about high level, low level, everybody. The idea is to keep everybody. I think I used this analogy once before. You know, when you lean back on a chair and you just get to that point of balance and you sort of catch yourself before you fall backwards, that's where we need to be. That uncertainty is where we need to be because that's how the White Hats can keep a hold of our attention and guide us gently through where we're going to end up. And so that's the general feeling around the planet. Everyone's a little bit titchy, a bit upset. One of the big things that's come, one of the major issues, and it sounds small, but it's not, and we'll talk about it later, is that the unjabbed are getting really angry at the jabbed. And there's a lot more videos coming out. Some of these are legitimate, just people. Some of them are white hat driven, because we know that the social media is the major weapon that the black hats used against us. And so the white hats are returning it in spades and starting to produce the messages, most recently of the unjabbed. A little bit cranky, waiting for the apology from the others. Anyway, that's another issue. But this week, if you want to know what's going to be happening this week, stay calm, stay cool. You know, they talk about collateral damage when you might drop a couple of bombs on an enemy position, and unfortunately there was a village nearby, and some of the damage caused damage to civilians. Well, that also applies to energetic activity. So I'm not talking energy weapons. I'm just talking energy of the planet, Schumann resonance, things like that. And so for those who understand energy and its role in how we live, what's happening this week is there's a little bit of collateral damage in terms of energy all over the place. And people will be getting very emotional, irrational almost, making the most ridiculous statements, coming to absurd conclusions. Even those closest to us, for example, which are better, they're starting to sound a little shaky, like, oh, I'm not quite sure. This person's really good. This person's a dirtbag. They're talking about other people. So there are elements to the war going on right now in terms of, and this is from my perspective, most important. Try not to take anybody too seriously this week, and don't, for goodness sake, don't take anything personally, because you might be the recipient of unwarranted attacks, apart from the normal nonsense that people like Patriot and I put up with. But quite apart from those, you might be targeted, or people just be strange towards you. Don't take it personally. This week, next week, of all weeks, just let it wash over and understand that there are things going on that none of us can see. It feels real. Yeah, the emotion is real. It doesn't make a basis in reality. So the big lesson this week, next week, is just stay nice and cool and calm. Let things wash over you. Don't take anything personally. Keep your powder dry and keep smiling.
All right. Well said, as always. And you touched upon a couple of very important topics that I really wanted to dig into a little bit here. One of them was the jab. Of course, I mentioned Fauci in the opening. That political theater really is what that was, in my view. He gets up there after getting the auto pen pardon. He pleads the fifth. It was like 111 times. And there was a lot of posturing. There was a lot of tough talk. One of the senators, I think it was Moreno, dropped an F-bomb. And so it was kind of, in a sense, throwing a little bit of red meat out there. But for people in our community, and I would imagine that as time has gone on, more and more folks have become aware of how deadly and truly damaging that the jab was, not only on their family members. I mean, we all know somebody at this point who either was perfectly healthy and just got immediately sick, or already had these pre-existing conditions, and they just went into no pun intended, but warp speed, and they ended up dying from it. So the people who are dialed in, and those numbers are growing, are getting increasingly frustrated over the lack of, like you said, I don't think you used the word justice, or accountability, but the idea of receiving some sort of an apology or some sort of a sense of accountability from the powers that be that put us through all of this. So maybe we could speak about that a little bit, and I'm kind of curious to get your take. I mean, you painted an excellent picture there, that the chaos and all of the drama that's going on is really being done by design. We've understood that for quite a long time in terms of the objectives of fifth generation war, and generating that necessary anger, which generates conversation, which gets people engaged. But that being said, there's a growing contingent of folks out there who are just really frustrated that this truth hasn't come out yet. And then they heard Trump say that he is going to essentially honor Fauci's pardon, which again, we understand at a certain level. We're watching kabuki theater, we're watching a scripted movie, but it does raise questions about accountability moving forward as it pertains to the jab. And in the broader context, we're also going to tie in a clip in a few minutes where you actually were asked a direct question on another show about the expectations we might have to accept, or might have to modify, if you will, in terms of overall disclosure and the truth coming out and justice, etc. So let's focus on that for a moment. About the jab itself, why do you think that they put Fauci out there in the spotlight? And in the aftermath of that, when Trump was asked about it in the Oval Office, he made those comments, which indeed were very upsetting to a lot of people. So what was your take on that?
Okay, let me give you the destination of these trajectories, and then explain that. For martial law to be accepted, it has to be unequivocal support. You can't have groups here and there of any size saying this is a constitutional right. You can't have it. The devastation has to be so finely achieved, that emotional state. You push them too far, you'll break them. You don't push them far enough, they're not ready for it. It's a bit like selection course. Selection course for special ops isn't about breaking people. It's about finding out what people are like when they are on the edge. You don't push them over there. Anybody can break anybody. There's no skill there. And this is the same thing. They have to maneuver people very close to the edge, so they are close to incandescent with rage. Now, one of the first things we've got to realize about the jab, and this came out years ago, the impact of the jab, the real one, not the saline, one of the first changes in people is a lack of empathy. So we're now dealing with people that are, they can't empathize. They will look, not quite sociopathically, but they will look at somebody and go, yeah, okay, whatever. And there's that natural human reaction, the capacity to put themselves in the place of somebody in pain and then make an assessment of how they feel about it from that position, that's gone. And so you've got all these people who no longer have the same access to empathy, and so it'll take a lot longer for them to start getting cranky. So they're not going to feel bad about other people, but they're going to feel bad about themselves. Hang on a minute. I was betrayed. I. It's all about I. And unfortunately, that's a lot of humanity is finally, after decades of demoralization and everything else, they are so self-absorbed. And there's nothing wrong with self-reflection and looking after your needs, but they're so self-absorbed that they can't see anybody but that. And so Fauci particularly, that the obvious, and we'll talk about the detail of the actual theater in a minute, but that's designed to upset a lot of people that they don't care that they heard the unjab. They don't care that they wanted us separated from our children. They don't care that they didn't care then that they wanted us in concentration camps. They didn't care that we lost our job. Fill in the blank. And here we are just trying to help people, and we're getting beaten up for the privilege. See, they don't care. They didn't care about us then, and they care about us less now because of the jab and the empathy. But what they do care about is themselves. And so the whole Fauci show was designed to wake up the people to realize that, wait a minute, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm sick? What do you mean I'm going to die? And even then, they're clinging to some defense in terms of, I did the right thing. Then you couple that with the, we'll honor Fauci's pardon. That's designed to get everybody really cranky. And so we got different messages to different groups with the same end state, get everybody cranky to the point where, okay, enough's enough. Now, we're not there yet, and we won't be for a while. But this support for martial law has to be absolutely unequivocal. The evidence has to be so overwhelming that every man jack out there and their brides say, enough is enough, it's time. Now, a lot of us have been there for some time, and we've been patiently waiting. And we've been accused of being wrong, and we haven't. We've been just aware. People like Patriot, myself, and all the other good guys online, we're just pawns on a chess match. We really are. You know, I'm on row 8 or whatever, and I'm just sitting there looking across at row 2 going, what are you doing? And we get moved. We get moved in order to advance the strategy. It's not like we get briefed every weekend by Mike Flynn. He says, okay, team, this is what we're up to. No. We are employed, we are manipulated, we're tricked into seeing certain things, advancing a certain idea, and then that idea doesn't come to fruition, and people look at us and go, you're bloody hopeless. Well, yes, this is war. Get used to it, folks. You're not in the headquarters. So you're used to watching war films where you see General Patton pointing at a map and doing the big sweep around, and no, real war, when you're a soldier on the deck, is you get an order, you just do it. And you hear explosions left and right or whatever goes on, you never see the big picture, ever. You just see the 6 inches in front of your face. And you do your best to make sense of it like we have been doing. So everyone's being played. So if you feel played, you have been, so's Patriots, so everybody else. We're just trying to make our best sense of it. Now, that has upset a lot of people, and it will continue to upset people. And that's the objective. The trick is for us not to get upset, to understand we have a role to play. We're not being directed. We're just pawns on the chessboard, and we get sacrificed. Welcome to the brutal mathematics of war, whether you're literally or metaphorically sacrificed. We are, and you just dust yourself off, get up, and away you go. Admit error, and just drive on. But you said 3 years ago that this was going to happen. Well, it would have if you'd stopped consenting, but you didn't, so we're still here. Anyway, you get my drift. So that's where we're going. The different groups got to get cranky. You know, Fauci's performance was exquisite, and you got to look at it like a TV show. Every image, my brother and I were going through it ourselves, and you listen to the words, and that's one thing. But even if you look at the framing of the shots, now you've got to understand when a TV show is produced, if a glass of water is in the wrong place, it'll get shifted. If the flowers are the wrong color, they'll be replaced with another color. Everything that you see in here is exquisitely and fine. So there with a big black guy on one side and the sleazy mafia-looking lawyer on the other, or Rand Paul, and you've got this model-like beauty behind him, thinking, what the hell is she even doing there? Everything, the angle of her, where she was seated, where Rand Paul was seated, and he was looking sort of across that way, and it leads the eye to a certain place on the screen. This is how fine it is. You speak to a good director producer, they can point to a screen and they know where they want the star to be. They want the number 2 to be at the 8 o'clock position, for example, because that's where the eye naturally travels. The really ugly one, for God's sake, put it at, I think it's a 10:30 position, because the eye doesn't naturally go there. So this is what you've been trained to do over decades of Hollywood and TV. They know you better than you know you, where you're looking and what your response is going to be. That's how finely tuned this whole show is. So please, as you're watching it all, watch it, then watch it again, and you look at it differently. Look at it. What's the framing here? How's the picture look? Why is that particular thing there? And you start to see things that otherwise you might not have seen. And the more you see, the more you understand. The more you understand, the more calm you'll be and realize, okay, now nobody gets all of it. Nobody gets all of it, okay? But at least you'll have a little bit more, and you won't you'll be responding if you need to rather than reacting, which is the old favorite saying, and it's a good one.
Mm. Well, that's a really interesting take on that, because again, the question I think that a lot of folks are having right now is we understand that we're watching we understand that we're watching this curated drama, and we have a pretty solid idea of what the objectives are, but yet, as you I think correctly pointed out, someone like yourself, certainly somebody like me, we're not briefed on the maneuvering that the white hats are doing at any given time, and that we're actually pawns on the chessboard as well, helping to advance certain narratives, push certain conversations, and overall, I guess you could say, corral the patriot community, and reminding everybody that there is indeed a plan that's ongoing. But it's also the frustration factor as well of being in the dark and not really knowing exactly at what stage of the operation we are. And that's, of course, a frustration that you've voiced many, many times. I've heard you on different platforms. I mean, certainly not in a negative way, but in an honest way, saying that, you know, you've been patiently waiting, and sometimes impatiently waiting to see the actual tangible, visible justice that all of us are ultimately fighting for. And you did an interview, I think it was a few days ago, with John Michael Chambers. You were on a panel with Derek Johnson and another gentleman. I'm not sure of his name, but somebody clipped it, and I watched it. It's about 4 minutes, and it ties in directly to what we're talking about right now in terms of the overall process of arriving at justice, and what some of our expectations have been, and how we might need to, I guess you could say, temper some of those. And I want to show that clip right now and have you maybe elaborate a little bit on it, and then we can dig a little bit deeper into that philosophical conversation about how we navigate this fifth generation war, how we navigate all of this deception that's being used, we believe, of course, for good purposes, for the benevolent purposes, to benefit all of humanity, but also at the same time, we're continually questioning, and you actually said just a moment ago, well, you know, how far off are we? We know what the objectives are. We can gauge to a certain degree that they're being met when people are getting, as you said, you know, people are getting a little bit pissed off, but we're not quite there yet. So the question then becomes for people in the community, well, what does that mean in terms of an overall timeline, and how do we stay focused and engaged in the operation? So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. And like I said, this was Lieutenant Colonel Bosi. I believe, am I correct? This was a few days ago with John Michael Chambers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and watch this clip, and then we'll discuss it. Here we go. Volume would be good. Here we go.
Actually, this is a narrative that's out there that I'd like you gentlemen to weigh in on. They'd be happy to have Trump around another 4 years, but they're afraid that that might mean we'll be living in more central casting all the way down the line. And this phase of the operation will continue on all the way down the line. That there won't be any justice, won't be any truth, there won't be any change then until 2029. Back to the top of the panel, how would you combat that, or what are your thoughts about that, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi?
Well, there's some truth to that, in the sense that when, regardless of who's the president, not all the truth is going to come out, and some of the truth might never come out. There are truths that'll be revealed that the people can handle. Fake elections, JFK wasn't shot, things like that. Because the emotional attachment is achievable. There are some truths that'll come out in 10, 20, 30, 40 years once the emotions and the people involved in the event have passed. There's no emotional attachment, saying, oh my God, they shot Breaker Morant in the Boer War in 1903. Okay, so there's no emotional attachment. And there are some truths that might never come out. So it's not predicated on whether DJT is the president or not. There is a plan. DJT is a key part of that transition. The president that follows him, there'll be fewer central casting, let's say, moments, but it will continue for some time, because humans take time to learn things. Humans take time to get something out of their head to put something new into that head. That's just the nature of life. But it's not, the threat isn't so much that DJT will continue running this charade without delivering justice, which is what people want to see and have every right to see. They'll get their justice, without a doubt. The facade, the show will diminish. There'll be elements of it for it to continue out of necessity, because some of the truths are so horrific that people will go into psychotic shock. People will suicide. Then these are real threats. So you're just delaying the truth. You're not so much deceiving people, just delaying the truth to protect them. And people think, well, I'm tough, I can handle it. Well, yeah, you can, but I don't care how tough you are. If you're, and this is an analogy I've used before and it's quite apt. If you're in a labor camp in Nazi, you hadn't eaten a solid meal in 3 years, the moment the Allies threw the gates open, if they'd fed them all steaks, the people would have died. The digestive system simply couldn't handle it. So they had to feed them gruel and slowly build up their capacity to actually digest food again. This is the same, except it's on a psychological and spiritual level. Just shove the truth in their faces, you will lose them. And it's a bit like the doctor saying, yes, the operation was a success, but the patient died. I did everything right, but the patient just cucked it. Well, no, you can't have that sort of lower level thinking in this. So just to recap, so we're clear, DJT is a key part of the plan. He is not the center of the plan. He is a transitional role. Whoever follows him, when he follows him, the level of protective delay of the truth will diminish, and United States will go first, and the world will follow in time in its own speed, depending on the nature of the culture of the country we're talking about. We'll begin to start living a more realistic life in its full sense. But again, this is not over by 2028. It's not over by 2032. Give it maybe 4 generations for the whole plan, most of the plan to work itself out. And then the truths will be revealed when they are digestible by the people. It certainly won't continue as it is now. Like everybody else, I am impatiently waiting for the big things to come out and to see hard evidence of justice, not retribution, not bloodlust, but just justice. Impatiently waiting to see that justice delivered so we can genuinely understand that we are now transitioning into a different world, if that helps out at all.
All right. So let me go ahead and pause that here. And I thought, hold on a second. Wait. Okay. I thought that was a great clip. You touched upon a lot of the really important questions that folks are wondering about. You said some of the truths may never come out. And we've discussed that, I think, on previous shows, the horrific nature of the satanic ritual abuse, the real gory details, things that would, as you, I think, correctly said, would cause people to have psychotic breaks. They wouldn't come back from it. People would commit suicide, etc. So I can completely understand that. Some truths may come out, like you said, 30, 40, 50 years long after we're gone. And that's, in a sense, it's kind of, even though I agree with you, I think it's a controversial position in some sense within our community, because there are a lot of folks who would say, well, and I also see this side of the argument that ultimately it's only the truth that's going to unite people. It's only the truth that's going to set us free. And if we're rebuilding our world, we're rebuilding human society, it has to be upon a foundation of truth. So that was one aspect that I thought maybe we could get into. And then I also wanted to explore a little bit more what you had to say about the necessity of emotional detachment that's necessary in order for people to be able to absorb the truth. And you talked about the next president, that gradually, whoever succeeds Trump, that there's going to be less and less of the psyops, less and less central casting, and seemingly more of a transition back into reality. But you also made it very clear that justice is coming, and that what's happening now is not deception for deception's sake, but rather in order to, it's more delaying the truth so that the white hats can protect mass consciousness. And like I said, a lot of people are firmly aligned with that viewpoint. A lot of folks might be able to offer some counter arguments that could be very persuasive along those lines. I've always said that until we get visible accountability and justice, there really is not going to be any great awakening for the masses. And certainly, it wouldn't be something that I would consider to be victory in this war. And when the Q operation started, that was a very brilliant way of galvanizing all the patriots out there, causing this grassroots movement to form and to keep pushing for justice. So it can be very discouraging for people to hear that, well, you know, you might want to temper your expectations a little bit in terms of what you're expecting. So I guess my question to you is, could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because it was a relatively short clip, and you and I like to go a little bit more in depth and talk a little bit more about the justice that we are going to see in our lifetime versus the things that may never come to the surface. You're still muted, Rick.
The justice we're going to see in our lifetime, and soonish, will be the tribunals. We'll see the videos of that. We'll see people charged, tried, found guilty, and executed. And the key people will be up first, the ones that that are deemed by the people to be the ones that they really want to see. You know, whether Michelle's got a dick or not it's neither here nor there to most people. They don't care.
Yeah, right.
But watching Fauci swing by his neck, watching Barack Obama swing by his neck, that'll be pretty satisfying for a lot of people. And it meets a need, because a moral wound has been imposed upon the people, and we talk about that later. So that's the sort of thing that we'll see. That justice will come, and that's part of the foundation for the people to move forward. For the people that are frustratingly waiting for more now, the fact that you are where you are, the fact that we are where we are, there's an old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. It's on your shoulders, it's on our shoulders to help the others through. The fact that we have a very strong internal locus of control, we understand that there are circumstances, but we are responsible for our decisions. That qualifies us to take a leading role in the rebuilding of our respective communities, towns, regions, states, and nations. It's on us. We don't get to sit back and say, told you so. Well, you can say it if you want to, and here's your told you medal. But we are all responsible to rebuild our nations. It's like denazifying Germany after World War II. The Nazis ran everything: the trains, the supply chains, the farms, the trucks, the deliveries, the lot. And they couldn't get all the Nazis and lock them up, because Germany would have come grinding to a halt. There would have been mass starvation, riots in the streets over the last bratwurst in the butcher shop, and you can't do it. It just takes time. This is the practicality of it. These are large, complex entities, nation states, extraordinarily large and complex, and nobody can run it. It takes everybody to run it. It's just the way it is. Everybody's got to have a role. And so the guilty bastards will be there for a while yet, and you might not like it. So they're not going to tell you they're guilty bastards. In a simple example, every Hollywood star, every one of them at the top, the ones you love, the ones who inspired you as a young man or woman to reach beyond what you were told you could have, they're all dirtbags. But so powerful is their input, so powerful is their potential assistance to the future, they're allowed to keep their reputations temporarily. Pick a fictitious name, Xavier Smith 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, it makes no difference. The image is there to help transition through, because people trust them or like them. People learn from them, and they don't want to see that, my God, I've been living a lie, I've been believing a lie. And so these people, their legacy is allowed to continue for a while. The real one might be gone. They've got a new one in there. And all of a sudden they're doing good things. And so they're using the goodwill, this affection, this deep affection. And it's very real. There's a biological component to it. There's deep affection for movie stars, deep affection for sports stars, deep affection for anybody in that leadership role. And I've said this before, you get a troop of chimpanzees and get a picture of the alpha male and stick it on the wall, and all the chimpanzees will stare at the picture of the alpha male. We are preconditioned biologically to do it. And to ignore that is just because it's just childish. Well, no, it's not childish, it really is. And so that's an example of the deception, well, not the deception, but the truth being delayed slightly. You know, Xavier Smith was a dirtbag, but people love Xavier Smith and what he did over decades in the movies, and he's inspiring. So let's keep using him. He's dead. He's been charged, found guilty, tried, whatever, and executed. And now this 2.0 version is out there doing good things and maintaining the reputation. Now, 100 years, no one's going to care about Xavier Smith, so the truth will come out. But this is the way they have to guide us through, because you just can't pull the plug. As much as you think you're ready, the system isn't, and all of us have a responsibility. If you're ready, then start what? Rebuilding. And we'll talk about that later. But that's what you've got to start doing, because you can't, DJT can't wave a magic wand and say it's all done, because it's already happening. Let me give you an example of how it's already happening. We know the food's being poisoned badly. Everything's poisoned. Why can't we eat that? I want it fixed. Well, most of it has been fixed. I just haven't told you about it yet. You think they've been sitting on their hands all this time watching poison being delivered to the people without doing something about it? Of course they have. Now, pick any food stuff you like, and all of a sudden there was a glitch in the system, and then it started again. Well, what happened? Well, they stopped pouring sacks of poison into the food, cleaned out the system, and now producing the same garbage they did last time, but at least it's not poison now, or the meat, or the eggs, or whatever they've been doing. They've been fixing this all the way along, getting people progressively ready. Now, the reason I'm talking about food is you just can't stop the food and say, we're going to stop all food production today, and it'll start again in 6 months' time. You can't do it, because people will starve in 6 months. So they've been fixing it. All this stuff has been actually happening behind the scenes. It makes sense. And so progressively, the food's actually going to be better. It's still rotten, but it's better than it was. At least the active poisonous ingredients are gone, and we've got to start eating right and exercising. But all these things have been happening. They can't tell you about it yet. And they won't tell you about it yet. And then people will say to me, but you said the white hats are in charge. Well, they are to a large degree. Well, why don't they do something? They have. Can you imagine these conversations in place 5 years ago? Think about it. People getting beaten up. We have imagery from Australia of a guy that went outside his house just to put his rubbish bins out after the curfew had kicked in. And there's photographs of 5 Australian cops beating this guy up for taking his rubbish bin out for breaking curfew. Mm-hmm. Now, that's what it was like in Oz. Look at us now. We're sitting here saying, screw you. We know what's going on, and we're going to take you down. Now, I've been doing that for a while anyway, because that's just me. I'm a belligerent son of a bitch. And but the average, but the average punter out there, and punter's an Australian term for the guy that goes to the races and puts money on the horses. For the average punter out there, this is terrifying stuff. And I understand that. I mean, I wasn't born this way. I wasn't born 6'3" and 220 pounds of Special Forces colonel. I was a polite little boy. I didn't have a nasty bone in my body. I had to learn to be an asshole. I learned quick, but I did. I had to learn. But most people are nicer than I am, and they're just good people doing their best. And so, as I said, no good deed goes unpunished. It's on your shoulders, on our shoulders, to start rebuilding. When do we build? We start. Well, we've started. What about you? What are you doing? Get out there. Get into it. If you're getting frustrated, great, but that doesn't help. Get to work. There's things to do. Get into your school. What do you call it? The board. The board that runs the school board. Yeah. Get into it. Start doing what you've got to do, but not just complaining, but actually get to work. It's good for your health. It's good for the family.
Well, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And by the way, folks, we do apologize for the spotty connection. Rick and I often have this problem. First of all, he's in Australia and I'm in the US. So there's a pretty vast distance between us, but there's also, I think, a little bit of maneuvering that goes on behind the scenes to try to mess up these live streams. Rick has talked about that quite a bit. There are certain interviews, certain conversations that are still attempting to be sabotaged. You made a lot of really excellent points there that I'll kind of piggyback on for a moment. One of the point you were just ending with there was the importance of people taking action. And despite the frustration, despite whatever it is that we're experiencing in terms of waiting on And even as you put it, sometimes impatiently. We are human. We get impatient at times, but it's very important for us to stay engaged and to actually use that energy for something positive as opposed to just wallowing in negativity. I absolutely believe that to be the case. And I actually have postulated, along with certain other people that I've spoken to recently, that part of the quote unquote negative optics that we're being subjected to right now is to do exactly that. That indeed there is the what we always understand as the target audience of the normies out there, but there's also as you spoke about before, I mean, the white hats that have this objective where they're communicating to all different people through these psychological operations. And for those of us who are dialed in and paying attention and can understand and see through a lot of the optics as they're being presented, that's on one level, I think, to keep us engaged and focused on the mission, but on another level, the frustration that's being induced over the lack of overt justice, over the repetition of the psychological operations, et cetera, that people feel might be geared in some ways to prompting us more and more to take action on a local level in order to facilitate the process. And I was wondering, and there are some other things I wanted to ask you about as well on this subject, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, whether the white hats are actually deliberately inducing perhaps even a sense of frustration, you might even say cognitive dissonance inside of the patriot community to stir people up and to get them to become more active and do what they can to advance the objectives of the operation. Do you think that that's part of the plan, part of the objective?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. If you look at controlled opposition is used by everybody. What you got to understand, folks, that in a war, you know, the bad guys aren't the bad guys and the good guys are the good guys. No, we all use the same tools. We both use spies, although spies are illegal. We both do nasty stuff. We all do covert ops. We do clandestine ops. We do, you know, the idea of the white knight on his steed charging in a battle, that's part of it, without a doubt. You need brave men and women who are willing to risk their lives for you. We've got that. There's a lot of nasty stuff goes on in the background and nice stuff. You know, the bad guys pay people off. Well, what do you think the good guys do? When a commander deploys to an area of operations, he gets a little bag of gold, and if he can pay somebody off to keep peace around his forward operating base, he'll do it. He just keeps paying them, and they don't attack. And I'll keep paying you, keep your people away. Go attack them, but just leave us alone. Oh, well, that's not right. Well, that's the way it's done. It's always been done that way. Force and fraud. Thomas Hobbes, the philosopher, war is a combination of force and fraud. And the more fraud you use, the less force you need. And the less force you need, the fewer body bags come home. And that's a metric. You know, there's no point winning the war and killing too many people. And so that's just part of the game. The other point I want to make was, oh no, it's gone now. Hang on, wait. Yes. So intentionally, are the white hats intentionally upsetting us? Yes, because you'll get your favorite commentator, and all of a sudden they say something so out of left field. You're saying, "What happened to this guy? I liked him. He was on point. He was sharp, and also he's talking nonsense by design. By design, folks. They need us destabilized. They need us thinking. They need us not sure. So I've been following podcasters for years, the really solid ones. And all of a sudden, Jesus, what have you been drinking, mate? You know, I don't watch you anymore because I can tell what you're doing. You're going down a particular narrative path necessary for the operation. I'm going, okay, great. I don't need to watch you anymore. I'm good. And so think about it. All your favorite podcasters, they're being directed like everybody else. There are no mistakes in this, none. And so when someone is on point and then goes off point, and the ones that won't do that, the ones that aren't under control, they'll be led astray. As I said, porn. Oh, look, something's going to be happening next week. Oh, yeah, get ready, guys. Something's next week. Next week doesn't come. It's a nothing burger. Oh, I don't trust you anymore because you warned us about 3 weeks ago and nothing happened. My own children look at me and go, Dad, you said this was going to be over years ago. And I said, yeah, I did, didn't I? We don't believe you anymore, Dad. So let us know when it's done. But, stop making promises. That's the nature of the war. It just is, guys. And isn't one more a picture for you to have in your head? Normandy, landing sword, Juno, gold, all the beaches, right? People dying on the beach. And it's like saying, why aren't we in Berlin yet? And we're all sort of French. Imagine that we're all French villagers and we can hear the guns on the beach, and they're here, they're coming soon, they're coming soon. And then Montgomery gets stuck and can't move for ages. And the villagers are going, hurry up, and there are men dying in the hedgerow country. Hurry up.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you here yet? Why aren't you here yet? We can hear you. You know, we're doing the resistance bit. We're up bridges and rescuing downed pilots and putting them through the pipeline back to old Blighty so they can hop in another Spitfire or Hurricane and come back over again. And people are getting tired, and people are getting hurt, and people are dying. You think the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force rang up every resistance leader and told them exactly what was going on? Of course not. That's what we are. We're just the French villagers doing our best to avoid the Nazis while we do things and not get shot, because we all want to come out of it. But you know,
yeah,
if you're on the Rhine and you're waiting for the Allies to turn up because you're sick of the Nazis, you know, sorry folks, these things take time. You can complain all you want to, but there's nothing you can do about it. These things just take time. And if you think you can do better, good luck. Good luck.
Well, let me ask you this, Rick. Let me ask you this question, because I'm curious to get your take on it. There's been a lot of discussion over the years in when we get into this, when we get on this topic of the timing of the operation and how the White Hats are operating. We know that there are obviously multiple objectives, and there's no simple answer in terms of when big events are going to happen and when we're going to get into the justice phase and all the things that people want to see. But one of the things that people have postulated is that the White Hats they're monitoring our discussions, they're monitoring the Patriot community, and even beyond that, they're monitoring the overall consciousness and awakening of the general population. And that is in many ways dictating the timeline of the operation. So that's like one theory, is that they're paying very close attention to human consciousness, and they're responding to that using these psychological operations to advance the needle and so forth. But that is fundamentally important to the timeline of how this operation rolls out. And then there's the other camp, which basically says, no, that this is all essentially mapped out already, that we're watching primarily a scripted movie at this point, and the sequencing of events has already been predetermined, and that it's not contingent upon we the people being more active, more engaged. My friend Lewis Herms often says that we the people are the plan, and that the White Hats are waiting for us to step forward in order for us to get into the next phases. What is your take on that? What's your
well, it's truth. Yeah, no, they're both correct to a degree. They're both correct to a degree. Are they monitoring the psychological well-being? Yes, and they're doing it in ways that we just can't even begin to imagine. But yes, that's happening. Are they waiting for us to stand up? You know, if we don't stand up for 30 years, is it going to take 30 years? No, because there is a plan. It is sequenced. It is good to go, and they will drop the hammer when they need to drop the hammer. Now, is it all sequenced, ready to go? Well, I guess Looking Glass might show them possibilities, but the fact that a commander will keep options open until he or she definitely has to choose a course of action, because in military strategy, once you are what's called decisively engaged in a particular aspect of a battle, you lose freedom of maneuver. You are now decisively engaged. You don't have any options. You've got to drive in. You just got to continue trying to. That's it. Anyway, in the strategic language, that's what it's called. Once you're decisively engaged, so a smart commander will have a plan, will have several options, and will refuse to be decisively engaged until the time is exactly right. So there might be 2, 3, 4 courses of action, more numbers of courses of action that the headquarters is constantly working. You know, course of action A, B, C, D, and E. Okay. And you war game it and you mitigate against the threats. That's why the staff officers in headquarters are such an extraordinary group of individuals. If I know it's more exciting to watch the guy with the weapon do the shooting bit, but what's behind that is just an incredible intellectual machine of military precision that it'll blow your mind away. And the shooters don't always pay the attention. They're the center of the world, and they are. They're the ones risking lives, but all the guys in their headquarters also risk their lives at some point. And now they take that experience and they can move divisions in 3 days. A Marine division in 3 days can deploy and do its stuff. Okay, and so these courses of actions are being worked. They're being war gamed. They mitigate against the risks. And all of a sudden something will happen, and then all of a sudden course of action A that looked like the best, and it was the best option at that time, something occurs unexpected, and then all of a sudden course of action B is looking a whole lot healthier. And so a good commander doesn't decisively commit. Now, what am I saying here? Is there a plan? Yes. Is it sequenced? Yes. Is there a timeline? Yes. Are they waiting for the people to get ready? Yes. But it is so finely tuned, and it's hard to do on a big scale. It's like trying to take the kids to the beach. What do you want to do, kids? Well, mum wants a beach where there's a coffee shop so she can have a cappuccino. You know, my boy wants the rocks so he can go snorkeling, and the girls want a couple of waves so they can body surf. So here I am trying to coordinate which beach we're going to go to. I've got a bunch of metrics to meet. Mum's got to have the coffee. The boys got to have the rocks. The girls have to have the wave. And that's just taking a family to the beach. Then you got to fit the timing in because you've got that report to write for work, which you haven't finished yet. So you've got to get there, have a great time, get back in time. Plus, you got to stop to get fuel, and we're running out of milk. And don't forget, we've also got to drop the dog out off at Nana's place. And that's just taking a family to the beach on a Saturday, right? And so you're balancing all these metrics. Oh, well, Dad can't organise taking us to the beach. He's bloody hopeless. Well, yeah, I am. Okay, I'm hopeless. But the fact is there are all these things that are going on simultaneously. Do the kids matter? Yes. Is there a plan? Yes. Is it sequenced? Yes. God knows everything. Just by the way, folks, if you think they know everything, they don't. Not even the Archangel Michael knows everything. Okay, all of us, except the Almighty, we're all doing our best to make sense of what the boss wants. So if you think there's someone that knows exactly what's going to happen next year, there is. It's the powerful intelligence outside of space-time, energy, and matter that knows everything. And everybody beneath that doesn't know everything. Nobody knows everything. So a little bit of humility here would be a good thing because we're all doing our best just to stay out of God's way and think about maybe there's something positive I can do in this situation. So I'm not trying to equivocate on an answer.
No, that's good.
The complexity would blow people's minds. If you got, it's funny, like a warship or a city, and they'll open it up to the locals to wander around the warship, and it's always fun to see and do, right? Mm-hmm. That's the sharp end of the machine. And if you get a chance, and I was privileged, you get a chance to stand on the deck of a carrier conducting operations, which I did. The John C. Stanley was just breathtaking. Flew in, landed, flew in on the C2, landed, was there for 24 hours. I didn't sleep because it was just so exciting being on a US warship in the Persian Gulf. 24 hours, saw as much as I could, and then we flew off. But that's just exciting. But if you could get an insight into watching a headquarters do its work, it's not what you call exciting stuff, but the intellectual horsepower, the systems behind it to synchronize myriad inputs into a cohesive plan that can change in a second, it's breathtaking. The human of this headquarters. And again, lucky me, Fifth Fleet, Bahrain, when I was there, I got a chance to watch them at work. Just extraordinary. And I don't feel bad, civvies, but you have no fucking clue. Yeah, it is breathtaking in its genius and its flow in the discipline and the training of the men and women in those headquarters to do what they do over and over and over and over again. It is breathtaking. You should be very proud of your military. But the point is, I understand why you're all frustrated. I get it. I really get it. You're trying to understand something you have no visual image of. You've seen shooters. Yes, let's see more shooters. Great. Have you seen the headquarters that works for 3 months to come up with a range of options and then can flip that plan within a couple of hours because the boss said, hang on, situation's changed, team. So he gets his J5 and says, right, fix it. And the general says, rightio, and gets the team together, away we go. It's I guess I'm lucky. I've been that guy that got the call, get down to the headquarters Australian Theatre, What for? Can't tell you. Great. So I fly in. We're locked in a room for a week with the headquarters staff. I was a special ops rep, and we were in for a week, and we had to come up with an option for an operation. Just a couple of options, I guess. We couldn't speak to anybody about it. We couldn't call our respective headquarters to get data. We just had to draw it because it was so tightly held. So it was a close hold op. It was so tightly held, we couldn't speak to anybody. So we just had to go, right, on what I know, I reckon we can do this, this, and this. And you speak to the submariners, and they'll sort of nod and go, yeah, we're good with that. And then land forces, the Navy, and then you got the cyber people have their 2 cents, and you start cobbling together this plan. And a week later, the plan's there, goes up to the commander, get the tick of approval, and the boss says, well done, and then you go back to work. So again, because I've seen this stuff, I've been part of it. I can handle it with a little more equanimity. I understand why people are cranky and frustrated, and I get it.
Yeah.
But if you saw the scale of it, you'd, as I said, a little bit of humility, understand that this is very difficult stuff done by very good people. You've got, man, you people are the best in the world. I sat there in planning groups with different nationalities, not all of them, but plenty. And just know that your US system is doing a bang up job.
We're in good hands. We're in good hands. Yeah, it sounds to me like the answer to the question is sort of a hybrid, right? On the one hand, yes, there is an operation that's mapped out, but it's also fluid in the sense that it can change on a dime at any given moment, depending in large part in terms of where the population is at, as far as consciousness goes. That to me makes a lot of sense in terms of framing it also as being what Q meant by the military civilian alliance. Like the military is running point. They're the ones who are coming up with the sequencing of events. They're the ones who are designing all these different operations. But at the same time, they don't want to use your term, they don't want to decisively engage unless and until the population is ready for that engagement, because obviously there's going to be fallout and there's going to be a lot of consequences for them being decisively engaged. So they're monitoring, but they're sort of holding back as long as they can. One would think, I mean, if you could just wave a magic wand and suddenly, let's just say 50 to 60% of the population was as awake as you and I and everybody out there watching right now, that could very rapidly accelerate the timeline of events. In other words, if the population got to a certain level of consciousness and awakening, the military would then, the commanders in control would then feel a lot more confident about decisively engaging. And what that really translates into at this point is pulling back the curtain and bringing us into the justice phase. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, you've nailed it. Yeah, well done.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well that's fantastic, and I want to circle. There's a lot of other things that we were going to hit upon tonight. I did want to circle back though for just a moment to what you were saying a little bit earlier about people being subjected to certain truths that they can't handle, and it sounded like you were saying that individuals that are celebrities, people that have been worshipped in our society, for lack of a better word, for a very long time. Let's just take somebody like a famous actor like Tom Hanks, who we all know is about as evil as they come, versus somebody like Anthony Fauci, who we spoke about earlier, right? Is that what you were talking about in terms of the emotional detachment factor? Like, people didn't really look at Fauci as being somebody for their entire lives that they idolized and looked up to in the same way as somebody like a Tom Hanks. So then, therefore, it would be easier for the public to accept watching Fauci hang at a military tribunal versus somebody like Tom Hanks. Is that kind of the direction you were going with that? I just wanted to put a finer point on it, just so folks understand what your perspective is on what it is that the public can handle and what they can't handle. Because like I said, this is a topic that always, and I don't want to beat it to death, but this is a topic that repeatedly comes up. A lot of folks out there don't like even the military making the determination about what humanity can handle, what they can't handle. and believe very firmly in complete disclosure, complete truth, with very little exception. And then there are people who have much more nuanced positions. So could you elaborate on that a little?
Just to your last point, which is very important that people have to understand this. This isn't military controlled. Okay. There's a profound and important premise in constitutional republics. The military is always subject to civilian control because civilians elected their leader. That is paramount. So is Donald J. Trump your legitimate president that you voted for? Yes. You have given him the authority. Now, he has then in turn gives authority to the military. This is not like, I don't know, ancient Rome, where the Praetorian Guard selected the next Caesar. As long as they got their cut, they would put the next Caesar into power. It's not like that. Now, the Praetorian Guard had the power to do it, just like any military in the country does. But militaries are not good at running countries. The militaries are good at running wars. It's just the way it is. And civilian authority must always be paramount. In this operation, and this has been key throughout from the very beginning, it is entirely lawful, it is entirely constitutional, it is entirely correct in a legal sense. Now, don't worry about, generals making these sorts of decisions. They're doing what they are required to do. They come up with a plan, and DJT, as the legitimate civilian president, authorizes or does not authorize. And he's been cranky a couple of times when things went a bit pear-shaped. So understand that you're in the hands of your elected president. So if you don't like what's going on, that's the guy you look to. And he stands up, and he's tough as old boots, Donald Trump. He really is. He can take the hits. You don't become a billionaire in the New York real estate market by being a wuss. This guy's a hard man. He doesn't guff from anybody, no matter how stars there are on the general's shoulder. So just on that point there. But back to the truth. I use the movie star analogy because that's one people can relate to. But for every good show, a protagonist and an antagonist. And the protagonist is Donald Trump, and the people in the guise of Donald Trump. And the antagonist needs to be a genuine bad guy. Every movie needs a good bad guy. And if you think about any film, you've got to have a good bad guy, otherwise the film just doesn't work. Sometimes the bad guy's better than the hero. I'll give you an example. Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. I mean, he was a really weak Robin Hood, and then you had the guy playing Prince John. It was just brilliant. He outshone the protagonist. What's another one that people might understand? Die Hard. Die Hard, the bad guy in Die Hard is just superb. You love to hate the guy. You're fascinated by him, right? So every movie needs a good
Alan Rickman,
antagonist. Yeah. That's him. Thank you. Alan Rickman. It's superb. Oh, man.
One of my favorite movies.
Yeah, every Christmas people are watching that. I'm watching Jimmy Stewart in
It's a Wonderful
Mr. Smith
Life.
Goes to Washington. The family wants to watch Die Hard. Anyway, they're following their mother's lead on that one. But anyway, so every movie needs a good protagonist and a good antagonist. And Fauci is the man that everyone loves to hate. You've got to have him there. Now, there are a lot of supporting members of this, the bad guys, but I used to use the act as an example. But there are other issues too. Like Mother Teresa. Is it true that she's related to Fauci? Did she really traffic children? Oh, my God. You can imagine how that's going to rattle the Catholic Church if that's true. I'm not saying it is, I'm just throwing it out there. Then you find out that the Pope John Paul II, which is a favorite with the Catholics, he turns out to be a dirtbag as well. Wow. Now, there's a billion Catholics out there that don't want to hear that. That's going to take a while. And then you've got, well, are we really created in the image of God? And the planet is 6,000 years old, as some religious biblical literalists will believe. Or were we manipulated by aliens from an original proto-human and turned into what we are today? What? And then you've got the scientific community, when they find out that Darwin is full of it, that he knew that the thesis of on the origin of species is completely fallacious. When they find that out, they'll die in a ditch rather than admit that maybe Darwin had it wrong and knew he had it wrong. And there is fine tuning that changes the plumage of a bird. In an industrial city, for example, the soot makes the trees darker, so the dark birds don't get eaten so quickly, so they become the dominant version of that particular species. But new species cannot be created. It doesn't work that way. That you don't get order out of chaos. It just doesn't happen. Second law of thermodynamics. If you don't believe that, look at your teenage son's room and tell me that the natural way of things is for things to get tidy. They don't. Second law of thermodynamics, it moves towards chaos. And so anything that creates order means there's an intelligent mind behind it, which means the whole theory of evolution is complete nonsense. Oh my God. Then you've got, and I'm going to keep rattling off things that people might or might not want to know about. The Hindu Vedas, hundreds of thousands of years old, Star Wars battles over planet Earth, spaceships, you name it. It was all there well before we turned up. What? And I'm getting things off. The flat Earth. The Earth's flat. No, it's not. It's a globe. No, it's a pear shape. No, it's rhomboid. No, it's not actually anything. It's a hologram, and this isn't real. All of these things. You just keep there's thousands of these little truths that we have assembled into a view of life that we hang on to. And any one of them, and you might say, well, I'm okay with the flat Earth thing, and somebody else might cry about it. I'm okay with this, but I'm not okay with that. There are so many of these little elements that we've assembled into our view of life and our place in life and where we fit and why we're here. What are you left with? Eventually nothing. Now, can you survive it? Of course you can. How do you become fearless in the face of this assault on our construct? I've said it a million times before. Put your faith in God and understand that your soul is immortal. See, what everyone's suffering from is this understanding. It's very recent in terms of global history. People think the materialist view, there is no soul, there is no God, there is no devil. This is it. And if I don't get my share before I die, I've failed. Well, the other view is we have an immortal soul. This is temporary. Don't value your life too much because your soul's more valuable. People will just do the worst things. And that shift from a belief in a powerful intelligence outside of space-time, energy, and matter, and I use that description intentionally because it's accurate, but it's also not emotive in terms of, why don't you say Allah? Why don't you say God? Whatever. Just cut the bullshit. The moment people cease to believe that they have a soul, and they cease to believe that there is something beyond this, and you're just being sucked in to a philosophy that's only really gained currency in the last 100 years. Listen carefully, folks. Up until now, our ancestors would look at us and go, are you completely fucking stupid? Can't you see evidence? It doesn't take a philosopher to understand that you need a prime mover, an initial force. What caused that initial force? Maybe a God. Okay? And so people are bought into this worldview. There is no God. I've got to get my share or I fail. Of course you're going to live in terror. You live in fear. My God, that's it. Oh, Jesus, what am I going to do? I'm terrified now because the Earth's flat. I don't give a shit. The Earth could be a cube. I don't care.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I just accept what I'm given. I go, okay, what am I going to do as a man that follows Jesus Christ? And he was the best of us. He showed us how to love and how to die. Now I get nowhere near his standard. I get that. And I fail on a regular basis, as I'm reminded every day by my daughters and wife. But my conscience is clear in the sense that I know what I've got to do. I've got to use this opportunity of life, give everything that God's given me, and my God, does he give with two hands, and do something useful with it. Rest very little, work very hard, die happy. Die knowing that you gave everything. And I tell you what, even that expression means nothing to people. When I grew up, everyone had to play sports, summer and winter sports, an individual and a team sport. Why? Because it was a great method for teaching children the rules of life, how to cooperate, how to rely on yourself. And I spoke to a couple of young men on the hill in Canberra during the big rally there. 2 million people, in excess of 2 million out of a population of, let's say, it's 25. Just extraordinary. And I used the analogy, it's like the ball and you run and you get tackled. And they looked at me blankly and I said, you've never played contact sport, have you? And they went, no. Don't value your life too much. Don't give it away, for God's sake. But please understand that if you want to get through this, the shortest, fastest way to surviving what we're going through is to get on your knees and pray to the God that Jesus prayed to at Gethsemane. Ask for help. His lines are always open. They will come. If you can't hear it, then go at the back when nobody's paying attention to you. Sit quietly for about half an hour. Ask a question and wait for the answer to come. It always does. It always does. I'm serious.
Well said.
That's the best advice I can give you today. If you want to get through this and survive it.
No, it's fantastic because it was a question, but that's what I love about our discussions is they tend to become they tend to become a lot more philosophical as we get deeper and deeper into the subjects. And I know that a lot of the shows that you go on, like you've shared with me, you don't really have a chance to wax and wane in terms of the philosophy behind all of this, and that's really important. And I guess what it is that a lot of us struggle with, and I'll be honest with you, I struggle with it as well, is the idea that all of us for our entire lives have been constantly subjected to evil. Whether we were aware of it or whether we were not aware of it, the reality is we've been constantly subjected to evil. We've been poisoned. We've been lied to. We've been dumbed down. Just about every attack vector that you can name has been leveled against us as humanity. And all of us want all of those truths to come out so that we can be from all of that deception and all of the things that ultimately, kept us chained and kept us suppressed and so forth. But then there's the flip side of the coin, which is the argument that despite the fact that people have been subjected to evil, and despite the fact that people have been dying from the jab, despite the fact that there are still so many people out there suffering, it somehow would be worse or too much to make people aware of the overall source of all of their suffering, the source of all of their pain, the source of all of the division, the reason that they haven't been able to live a fulfilling and happy life, that the reason that they're not able to put food on their tables, the reason that they're living paycheck to paycheck, and so on and so forth. Like, again, I could go on and on and on. And so that's where I think the interesting philosophical question comes up is it more beneficial to humanity to tell people that, I guess, is it more beneficial to the healing process, the awakening process, to be more transparent with people as opposed to kind of walking on eggshells and making judgments about what humanity can handle and what they can't handle? Like you said, we've been living a lie our entire lives. And that's exactly what we want, is to break people's matrix, to make them aware that they've been living a lie for their entire lives. And you're right. People have different areas that are going to really upset them. For me, and I'm sure for you as well, and for pretty much everybody out there, what really got to me the most was the satanic ritual abuse, the trafficking of children, the feeding on innocence. And I understand that that's probably the most sensitive area, that they have to be very nuanced in terms of how they present that to the population. But in terms of all of the evil scumbags out there, there's certainly a case to be made that humanity would be a lot better off if this process was more, I guess, more geared toward liberating humanity's consciousness, as opposed to protecting the mass consciousness that is already extremely sick by constant deception. It's like only the truth will set you free. So it's a very interesting question. Is there anything you wanted to add? Because I had a follow up too about the legality of the operation. Go ahead.
No, your point's well made, but it's not like they've got their foot on the brake. Don't worry, they're moving fast. The reveal is already happening. Name after name after name is being leaked. I heard this, I heard that, and it starts to filter up. So they're moving as quickly as they can, and they're moving quite quickly. It doesn't seem obvious. The fact that we can say that Tom Hanks is a dirtbag and did bad things to children now without a massive pushback means that's already reached into consciousness, although nobody made an announcement that he's a dirtbag. It's just been feeding out. So it's happening at great speed. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sound a little bit brutal here. We are going to shift when it comes quite quick, and it'll be a very different place. It's not like this world without the bad guys. It's going to be, we have to be different, every one of us. And that will be accelerated to a degree because there will be some deaths. A lot of those that wouldn't want to shift will die, and those of us who are left will accept this a lot easier. I don't mean to be cruel here, but people will die, and the ones that will die are the ones that are jabbed, and they're the credulous ones that didn't want to shift, and they'll die, and they won't be in consideration anymore. Now that sounds terribly callous of me, but I'm just looking at it dispassionately and looking at this timeline and going, the numbers are going to drop. It's not like the people we've got here are going to be here in 20 years. They won't. The world will change. The world's going to be very different to what we are living now. As I said, it's not just now without the bad guys. All of us have to change. GDP is not the measure of a civilization. And, please, you got to get this into your heads, folks. GDP is not the measure. As a child, I used to watch the news and go, oh, the stock market rose today. And as a little boy, I go, I don't care. And I still don't care because it's bullshit. Because we've sold our souls for a good balance of payments. Now, that sounds terrible and naive or right on the money, and I can tell you which one I know it is. It really is. Anyway, we have to change, guys. And we will. We'll be compelled to. We'll be compelled to change.
Yeah. No. At the end of the day, we're all. I mean, this is called the truth movement for a reason, right? We're all in this so that we can do everything that we can to spread the truth to the masses and advance the operational objectives, move the needle, however you want to say it. But I firmly believe that only the truth can change people's hearts, and deception actually hardens people's hearts after a while. That's how people become they become narcissistic, they become passive, they become disengaged, because it's almost like a sense of learned helplessness when you're constantly being subjected to deception over and over and over. And I'm not suggesting that this is not even a criticism of how the operation is being run, because I understand the necessity of it on one level, but on another level, it has the effect after a while of making society grow sicker, in the absence of that truth. Whereas the truth is actually, even though it's very, very painful, and even though it's a very difficult process to go through, and you and I have both been through that in our personal lives, and we had to face realities that we didn't want to face, that ultimately brought us to our knees and brought us to Christ, exactly what you were just talking about. That was not because we were living inside of a delusion or a deception. It was because we were confronted with the harsh reality of our situation, of our life, and we had no other choice but to turn to God. And so I'd like to think that that's ultimately the direction that we're headed. The perpetual psyops, while they might be effective in terms of meeting military objectives, if we're talking about changing humanity, like you were just discussing, and very eloquently, by the way, that I believe requires as much of the truth as they can possibly present to the people. That is going to shock people. The reality of the matter is, the flip side of the coin is, we don't want people having psychotic breaks. We don't want people jumping off of buildings. We don't want all this mass chaos in society. But the flip side of that coin is, you could also make the argument, and I don't think it's that much of a stretch, is that people are already committing suicide. People are already having psychotic breaks. People are already miserable. People are already broke. People are already sick. And so I believe that at the core, the truth is ultimately the only antidote to what plagues humanity. So but like you said, we're moving in that direction very rapidly.
Let me just jump in, because Plato wrote about this in his Republic. If your listeners haven't read Plato's Republic, please do.
Yep.
And in that,
he
describes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
The noble lie. And it's quite explicit, and I think people misinterpret it as guidance. I think the elites of the planet have read the Republic as guidance as opposed to an analysis. But it says, oh no, the people are stupid, just lie to them. They're too stupid to know the truth. So the noble lie is okay. I sort of get that, but I like you. If there's one thing that I could change on this planet, it would be for people to tell the truth. That's the only place you can start. Everything else flows from that simple fact. Just tell the truth. It's the noble lie I find, and I've been talking about this for years, I find distasteful.
I do too, to be
And
honest.
the truth will hurt people. But then what they learn to do, and here's the thing, this is a part of the maturation process. When a child is born, the default setting is to trust. And then the amygdala, as a result, the amygdala, that part of the brain, over a lifetime of betrayals and trips and falls and skinned knees and whatever, what the amygdala learns to do is distrust. And that's how we survive. Because if we continue with that wide-eyed innocence, we're just, these ingenues will just be taken out, which they have been. So learning to distrust is a good thing. It is survival, necessary for survival, not only a part of the maturation process, but it's necessary for survival. And so the fact that people are trusting less and less and less seems to be a retrograde step in terms of civilization, but it's actually an advancement where people won't get hurt so easily. It's not like they become hardened. That's one option, but they're just more discerning. They're a little bit more careful before they commit. And if we get a population that's a little less trusting of everybody, as that famous internet picture shows, there's a picture of Abraham Lincoln. It says, "Don't trust everything you read on the internet." 1864. That becoming more discerning about what to believe and who to believe, that's a necessary precondition for us. Now that'll be in the new world. Imagine being able to tell when someone's lying or not. That's a pretty cool, or just being deceptive, whatever you want to call it. It's a pretty cool thing to have. So anyway, this distrust is not a bad thing. The noble lie is to temporarily delay the truth. I get it. To build a civilization on it, no, can't do it. You got to have the truth, and then we can grow as independent beings, capable of trusting ourselves, and therefore we'll know how to trust others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, trust hinges entirely upon people's acknowledgement of the truth versus the perpetual deception. And while I understand the noble lie, I remember when I read Plato in college and in the Republic, I had a debate in my classes about it because, there's certainly is an intellectual, very logical and rational argument to be made for the noble lie. But part of me believes that the reason that we're here right now, the reason that humanity has ended up in this place is because the noble lie, I mean, deception tends to self-perpetuate. And like it's just like somebody who's a liar, a compulsive liar, eventually they can't keep their stories straight because they have to add another lie to another lie and another lie. And they just get heaped upon. Yeah. And I think that's maybe how it started. It was this idea of a noble lie, but it's still a lie at the end of the day. And I also believe that it essentially serves the purpose of propping up the elites. It serves the purpose of, and that was also a big part of Plato's Republic, was societal structure, as you know. And that noble lie was necessary for the ruling class to stay in power. So that's also something that I would add to that as well. But indeed, I agree with you absolutely in principle that we are making even though it's slower than we want it to be, we are making a lot of progress, moving in the direction of, to kind of go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, transitioning out of the rinse repeat over and over psychological operations. And then we're just going to transition into reality again. Like we're all going to feel like we're no longer living inside of a movie. We're no longer being subjected to constant deception, but we're actually getting the truth. And on that foundation, we can pivot back into reality, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. But that has to happen. And I think that's a big reason why so many people are frustrated is, yes, it's the lack of justice, overt justice. And I want to talk about the legality of the operation in just a moment. It's that on one level, but it's at an even deeper level. I think people are feeling something inside of them eroding more and more as time goes on. With these, with the constant central casting and psychological operations that we're being subjected to. So it's a complex, on the one hand, it's necessary, but on the other hand, we hope that it's something that in our lifetime, certainly, that we'll be able to experience that transition back into a world that makes sense, that that is rooted in truth, as opposed to constant deception, which is the only thing that we've ever known. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier that everything, and of course, Q made this very clear in the post, that everything is being done by the book. Everything that's occurring is legal, and so forth. You and I have also had conversations in the past where we've touched upon certain aspects of the operation that might be a little bit in the gray area, shall we say. And you described, the knock on the door, and, somebody puts an MP5 in your face and says, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, you're going to take a bullet. So I was thinking about this recently, and I was playing around on Grok, and I asked the question, the premise of the way most of us understand the Q operation is that there's a secret military operation that's been happening in the background that has been kept largely hidden from the public, that has resulted in the covert arrests, detainment, sentencing, and in some cases, execution of individuals, right? So what I wanted to get your expertise on this, because I was looking into like US code, the UCMJ, even international law, and based upon what I could find, I couldn't find anything I could really sink my teeth into and point to and say, well, that would be the legal mechanism that would enable this operation to actually be playing out as it's understood. I kept coming up with, regardless of whether it's executive orders, whether it's the Insurrection Act, whether it's national emergencies, whether it's martial law, that still has to be rooted in constitutionality. There still has to be Sixth Amendment right to a public trial, etc. And that flies in the face of what a lot of us believe have been happening in the background. So I wanted to get your expertise on that, and just kind of give me a little bit of insight as to the legality of the operation and how folks can wrap their brain around that.
Yeah, the best person to ask that's Derek Johnson. That's point number one. Derek's the master of that. Now, interestingly, I did exactly what you did some time ago, and I couldn't get the answer any more than you could. I couldn't follow it all the way down to its final point where I can hang on. Yep, that's exactly right. I couldn't find it either. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like you did exactly the same thing, and I came to the same conclusion. I can't find it. Now, here's the funny bit. Every game has rules. Every game. Wars have rules. Monopoly has rules. Poker has rules. And you can't cheat. Not allowed to cheat. If you cheat, you don't win. Well, sometimes you cheat. Sometimes you do shit you shouldn't do. And you know it's wrong, but it's a, what would you call it? And I've been in a situation where I've done something which I know has been outside the rules. And I'm not going to blame anybody else other than me and say, well, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And if I'm wrong, I'll pay the price later. It's just the way life really is. We can't anticipate everything. Now, because I haven't found that one document, that one piece of paper, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You can check with Derek, I suppose. But I'm comfortable enough that what's being done is being done well enough to pass what we call in Australia the pub test, the public bar. Where you go to the bar, the pub. Does it pass the pub test? If you're talking about in the pub, would they go, yeah, that's about right? That's the pub test. And so I guess I accept that, you know what, maybe there's some things going on that aren't going to be announced, but it was a good thing to do at the time. And as I said, I've been involved with things like that. Nothing bad, just outside the rules. Spying's outside the rules. You can't do that. It's against the Geneva Convention, blah, blah, blah. Spies get executed. And we all have spies. So,
good point. Yeah.
Can I point to the one document that says this is all legitimate? No, I've looked for it. There are enough there to indicate that there's something to it. But right here, right now, this is where the way I justify it to myself is this. The rules have been made by somebody. Were they infallible? Yeah. Were they infallible? No. And now as a man, I have to make up my own mind, where do I stand? Do I cross the road, even though it says don't walk, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, there isn't a car for 30 kilometers, and the rule says don't walk. When it says don't walk, wait till it says walk. And I go, I'm walking across the road. It's almost like that. When all of us reach that level of self-trust, it's not disregarding the rules, but you trust yourself to break them when it's necessary because it's important. So I'm not sure if that makes sense. When we all get to that point, we'll realize, yeah, we need rules, absolutely, but the rules are just fallible. And sometimes you can't anticipate everything. This is the mistake communists make. They think if we have enough rules, we'll be fine. No, you're never fine. You can never come up with the rules. Even the Constitution's not perfect. And sometimes I break rules because I think, in my judgment, it's necessary. Now, do I do it willy-nilly? Absolutely not. Am I a big fan of rules? But I've been there and I've had subordinates come up and say, boss, I did this. I go, yep, good call. And I just let it roll. Big things, little things, it doesn't matter. Just move on. And that's what we, in my view, that's what we as individuals now have to, that's what we come to. We follow all the rules all the time, or we don't. And I'm old enough and wise enough and silly enough and dumb enough and cranky enough and old enough to say, screw the rules for now. We're going to do something different. And if there's a consequence, I won't point the finger. I'll just put my hand up and say, yeah, that was me. I done it. And that's what it need to be.
Well, that's a very interesting answer to, and it's also part of what I've considered as well, is that number one, the rules as we know them, the laws primarily were written by the bad guys, right? Not our basic constitutional rights going back to our founding, but so many of the laws and codes, etc., have been written specifically to insulate the very people that you're trying to target. And so therefore that would require you to go outside of their rule book, to not play according to their game. And that's the aspect of the operation that I always believed, or I shouldn't say always believed, but I ultimately pretty much sided with the conclusion that the covert nature of what's been happening, secretly arresting people, secretly having tribunals, secretly putting them to death, is something that the general public would never accept, right? Because they would have to see, like, in other words, if the EBS went off tomorrow and Trump or the military came out there and said, oh, we've been running this secret military operation and all these people are already dead and you've been watching people in mass, etc., there would be mass chaos, and people would never accept that, because on its face, it would look like a lawless coup, an overt takeover, and that would be entirely counterproductive. So that's why they have to do the replay and have the martial law and everything and go through the process to show the public in a way that would be legal so that they could accept it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'll give you a prima facie example where that happens. I'll tell you this story first up. Most military coups on the planet are done by colonels, either side of that rank. Why is that? Because the colonels are trained enough and smart enough to actually do it, and they're not going to wait 20 years to become a general. They said, fuck this, I'm going to do it, and away we go.
Yeah.
That's point number one. So all of us in our life get to a point where we go, I'm not waiting any longer, I'm going now. Now, the price of peace. El Salvador had, I think, at one point 100 homicides for every 100,000 people. It was the worst in the world, except for countries where there was an active war. Mm-hmm. Then became the and we know what he did with the various gangs and locking people up. He basically locked up the gangs. 2% of the male population of El Salvador is in jail. 2% of the male population. Think of that number. And what happened? Murders went to, it's safer in El Salvador than it is in the United States.
Oh, by far. That's
for the murder capital of the planet. Now, the people are happy. Now, is there a price to pay for that? Yeah. I think they arrested so many people, I think 60,000 or something. 8,000 were wrongly arrested and they were eventually released. And the pearl clutching lefties are going, oh my God, terrible. People were arrested out of, they went to jail. Well, it's wrong. But life's imperfect. Am I saying I want to live in El Salvador? Not really. But is it better now than it was then? By a large margin. Are children back in the streets? Are they happy? Are the piazzas filled with poor but happy and free people that aren't afraid of getting whacked? Now, do things have to lighten up a bit so they feel free to criticize the government? Because there's also a shocking history of military control and murdering over decades and decades and decades. And so they have a particular history. So you can take the line that Bukele is a bad man. He arrested 60,000 people, of which 8,000 were wrongly imprisoned. You know, that's terrible. But every so often, you got to flood the planet to get the crap out. That makes sense? And I'm not saying God flooded the planet. He didn't do that. That's just nonsense. That's Old Testament nonsense, but it's a good metaphor. Sometimes he's going to flood the planet to get the crap out. And that's what he did. And now he's saved his country. Now, what happens next over the next years will determine whether he's done the right thing in terms of now freeing up the people to do what they want to do, to actually start to grow the economy, and then for reduce poverty, increase wealth, etc. Now, did he do the right thing? Everyone else has to make up their mind. Go look at the stats on El Salvador. Go have a look at what's happened, what hasn't happened. Is it cruel and unusual to lock these guys up and make them live like animals when they behave like animals? I mean, these were the ones that came into the US and established MS-13. That's an El Salvadorian gang that was established in US straight out of the civil war of El Salvador, and the other one as well. The name doesn't come to mind. And they were murdering Americans by the bushel. So I understand this is just my perspective, but every so often people need to sit down, shut the fuck up, let the guys do what they've got to do, and then the guys will leave. It's like a siege hostage situation. I used that analogy before, except the whole planet has been a prison planet. And that's why it's going to be a little uncomfortable for a little while. And just be grateful that blood and treasure has been spilled on our behalf. And we should be a little bit grateful and a little bit humble. If we had done our job as sapient, sovereign individuals, we wouldn't be here. But guess what? All of us, we messed up.
Mm-hmm.
We thought the GDP was all that mattered. Buy your house, make your repayments. Don't upset the apple cart.
Yep. And then when you're done paying off your house, you keep paying property taxes to the state because you never really own anything. But that's a side note. But yeah, I mean, El Salvador is a very interesting example, and I completely agree with your take on that. And one of the things that makes the United States unique as being the epicenter of this operation is that we have certain constitutional restraints that other countries don't have. And I believe that Bukele was able to do what was necessary. As they say, a man who saves his country violates no law. It was necessary to make these difficult decisions, but I think there were a lot less just in terms of optics alone, there were a lot less constitutional barriers and restraints and legal restraints that we have here in the United States, which is why, in order to conduct this operation covertly, my theory is that they had to, unless there's some sort of, and I had this argument with somebody online because I posted about this, and this individual was trying to tell me that there was some sort of a secret rule book that the public doesn't know about or something along those lines. And my response was essentially that there really is no such thing as a law. If it's in secret and the public knows nothing about it, then it lacks any legitimacy on that level. But that they had to do what was necessary. The only way that they could do what was necessary was to operate outside of the law, which also necessitated the scripted movie element of it in order to eventually bring the public up to speed and to replay things so that people would not only understand it and accept it, but they would also see, okay, well, the president declared martial law. This is legal. The military is doing what they have to do out in the open, transparent. I don't think the public would ever accept the idea of how the war is actually being run behind the scenes. And that's just my belief.
I've got two points to make to that. One, the United States exists because the colonists told King George to go fuck himself. They broke the law. They said, no, we're not going to listen to you. We're going our own way. So there you go. For those people that don't like breaking laws, you only exist in the best country, the freest country on the planet, because somebody decided to break a law. Okay? That's
yeah. I mean, just to clarify, I'm talking more about like the optics for all the normies out there. I'm not talking.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I know. I get it. I just find it amusing because the colonists broke the law. The king was the law. There were things done. Second point. But anyway, that's it. You exist because you broke the law. You put a finger in a king's face and said, "Nah, we're not going to." Second point. Oh, hang on, it's gone. Wait. Right, that's it. Putting a gun to somebody's head and saying, "Do it or I'll squeeze the trigger." If that person is innocent, if that person has rights, if this person is not in the process of committing a crime, it changes. But if they are, and I'll give you a really practical example. This is my view. We've got the police in this country, and the police here are part of a corporation. They're not police officers. They're just like security guards. Right? They are not constitutionally established police. They pretend they are, but their oath is to a corporation. So now let me put this question to you. If a civilian came up to you and put a gun to your head and say, "You're going to do what I told you," and you pulled out your everyday carry and blew his face off, you're just defending yourself. You haven't broken the law, have you? So all these bastards that are currently being dragged up are in the process of committing crimes, presenting themselves as things they aren't. The cops particularly are armed and are now threatening people with violence, under no basis of law, inverted commas. So if a copper came up to me and I blew his face off, I would have no problem with that at all. Now, I'm not recommending violence, folks. You know that we have been from the very beginning, but I'm just saying theoretically now, in terms of this, the law behind what we do. If a copper comes to my door and pulls out a gun and says, "I'm arresting you," he's fucking dead, because he's not a cop. He's a corporate security guard pretending to be a cop in the commission of a crime, threatening me with violence. And I don't care how many pedophilic goat fucking judges charge me and lock me up. I have no problem. My soul is clean. That guy had no authority to pull a gun on me. That guy had no authority to detain me. That guy deserves to be removed from the face of the fucking planet. And as soon as the white hats get rid of the black hats, we're going to find out how good life can be. But understand this law bullshit that has been imposed upon us, and excuse me for getting a bit energized.
That's okay.
But this that's been imposed upon us by criminals in the commission of a crime, threatening us with violence, threatening our lives, our liberty, our property. No, they deserve zero. Now, the fact, and I said this a long time ago, the fact that we're treating them better than they treated us speaks volumes of the manner in which this recovery operation for the planet is being conducted. And if a few people get their noses out of joint, I don't much care. They can whine and like the little chicken shits that they are. But when they're ready to become real men and real women and step up and defend themselves and their families, then I'll listen to them. But every one of those little whiny bitches out there has forfeited their right to be taken seriously. I'll sit quietly and, I'll let them do what they do. But understand this, I'm sitting back on a volcanic fury that I've got to keep in check, because my default position is not to negotiate. My default position is not to fight. Soldiers don't fight, we kill. That's what we do. We're not police, we're not diplomats, we're not businessmen. We just end the fucking argument. And the fact that I haven't speaks volume of my discipline and understanding that the wise course of action is to do this peacefully, as we've said from the beginning. Every copper out there should know that they're only alive because we're disciplined. That's it. Yep. You can convince yourself that you defend the law. There is no law in this country. There is no law in Australia. Zero. So there's nothing for you to fall back upon. Just so we clear the air between myself and all the Masonic filth out there that think they run this joint. You don't. And you're going to go down real hard. Real hard.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it actually reminded me of there was a movie. I can't remember I think it was called First Night with it was basically like an Arthurian legend reenactment of that. There was with, I think Sean Connery was in it, if I remember correctly, Richard Gere. I don't remember, but there was a line in that movie. There are laws that enslave men, and then there are laws that set them free. And I think what we're dealing with here is a situation where we've been subjected to the former. We've been subjected to laws our entire lives that, and the color of law authority as well, as you just described, that have enslaved us. And that the White Hats are really, what they're doing is that they're acting to broaden the metaphor, the example that you just talked about. Like if a cop comes to your house under color of law and pulls a gun out, you're completely justified in defending yourself. If you broaden that, that's essentially what the White Hats are doing on behalf of humanity. They're acting in self-defense of humanity. And at that point, the rule book kind of goes out the window. But it's still, in terms of the optics and the presentation, in order to keep society intact, they have to do it this way. That's why Q said it had to be done this way, because that's the only way that people would ultimately accept it. Otherwise, it would probably boomerang back in the completely wrong direction, and people would become violent, and it could go sideways really fast. But excellent point. I'm glad that I asked you that question. So we're coming up. I know you were a little bit constrained on time. We actually originally wanted to start an hour later. We agreed to start an hour earlier, and I know you have some things that you have to tend to. So did you still want to talk about the rebirth of the great nation? Did you want to end with that, or what's your thought?
Yep, I'll if I could, because this is important, because given everything else I've said, that note, what's important. And so can I share screen now, mate?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Right, just give us a second. I'll be right. There we go. Tell me when you've got the screen. Have you got that?
Yep, here we go. All you.
Okay, so you've got I can't see what's up, so all I can see is you've got the boxes all blacked out.
Yeah,
have you?
Yeah, we got the slide Rebirth of a Great Nation with a bunch of different boxes.
Okay, cool. So ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing, and this is how I spend my time. We're future focused. We're designing the future. Those that follow us know that we don't cover current affairs. We've got great people doing that. But what we do is we're actually actively involved in creating the future. And this does a couple of things. One, it gets us focused on something that's extremely positive and exciting, rather than being stuck in when is the bad news going to, when is the good news going to come through. I'm not sitting waiting. The organization isn't sitting waiting. And so what we're doing is we want to become a constitutional republic. That's our view of the planet. But how do we get there? We don't want somebody to write it and then say, look, here's a constitution. I hope you like it. What we're doing is engaging the Australian people in understanding what the process is, and then coming to a logical conclusion over time of what the Constitution should include. So what we've done is this. Here's the methodology we're doing. It's a 21-part series. We're up to part 11 coming up this week. And let me just take you through the methodology. There are things called national power, the elements of national power. These are the tools that you have to build your nation. It's like Granddad's workshop where you walk in and the wall is covered with a ton of tools to do just about anything. Then we've got the elements of our national end state. That's what the qualities that we want Australia to have. And then we've got the driving strategy. What are we going to do? How are we going to live? Who are we and how are we going to live, basically? This is going to drive our strategy. And then going through that process, we end up with the political and legal apparatus of the state, which is our constitution. So let's go through it. And this is literally what I'm doing every week. They're the 19 elements of national power. Now, if you look up elements of national power online, you'll get diplomatic, informational, military, economic, and technology. And that's tactics for tiny tots. The granularity is so gross that you can't make sense of it. So we broke it down into 19 separate elements of national power. These are the tools in Granddad's sheds. And you've got tangible, intangible, and hybrid. So geography is an element of national power. How you use that to your advantage. The natural resources, population, economic capacity, energy, all the way down. The intangibles, political organization and the quality of government, leadership, national character, national morale. And then you get to the hybrids, military capability. These are all the tools that we have to build our nation. And people sort of look at that, and it takes the A1 people, they're getting their heads around it. This is heavy stuff. It's data heavy, but we have to start elevating our level of thinking to do the job. So these are the we have to build what we want to build. This is the qualities of the nation we want to have. We want it to be moral. sovereign, self-reliant, Christian, Western. We want a constitutional republic. We want it to be economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. And that's what the qualities we want it to have. But what shapes all of that? Because you can build anything with those tools in that end state. But what do we want to build? Well, we have a twin pillar strategy: identity first, great power. So we want to know who we are. We are a Christian, Western, Anglophone country, and it's going to stay that way. It will remain a Christian, Western, Anglophone. So identity first. Everything drives to that identity. That's who we are. How are we to live? We want to be a great power. We are tired of being the shit kickers on the arse end of the planet, to be honest. We're under Great Britain, and now we want to stand on our own 2 feet. What does that mean? We want to have Indo-Pacific regional hegemony. We are the power in the Indo-Pacific. We are geographically beautifully placed for it, and we're ready to go. On top of that, we want to have global leverage to shape normative orders. What does that mean? It means that we are so powerful across all the metrics that we can shape the way our little corner of the world behaves. For example, slave economies like China will no longer get any of our natural resources. Why? Because we don't like trading with slave traders and people that sell body parts from the Falun Gong and the ethnically Chinese Muslims, because they sell body parts to all. See, the Chinese nation are a corrupted bunch of pre-biblical barbarians, and we're not going to enrich them. So we're going to deny them access to our resources until they behave themselves. This is what normative orders means. Same with India. Same with every country in our region. We're going to pull the tap on everything that we sell the planet. Why? Because we can. Do we need them? No. We could put a wall up around this country. We're lucky. And be richer and happier the world out. Now, we're not going to do that because that's silly. But by Christ, I can tell you, we're going to shape this planet to start thinking better than it currently is, where GDP, as I said, is not for sale at the price of our soul. Then we've got, what about the people? This is a top-down plan. And I don't trust top-down plans any more than you do, and you shouldn't. This is where we include constraints and restraints. What are they? Constraints are what the Constitution must do, and restraints are what it must not do. Now, where did that come from? Well, when James Madison wrote your Constitution with assistance from a couple of others, he got massive resistance from the people. They said, well, hang on a minute, we want to say here, because they wrote the Constitution, put out the Federalist Papers trying to sell it, and by and large, people thought it was okay. But they said, we want to say. Well, what do you want, said James Madison? He said, well, we want the right to bear arms. We want the right to free speech. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we want. And Madison pushed back and said, yeah, but that sounds like their higher rights than the rest of what the Constitution allows. And it gives them a preeminence. And they said, we don't care. Eventually, Madison relented, and they became your Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the US Constitution. Mm-hmm. But just so you're clear on it, and you get this out of this book here by Lloyd Brunson. He put this out, a Constitution, with the text of the American founding documents. It's got the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the amendments, and a couple of other very interesting things. One of those are his 7 powerful constitutional discoveries. And the first one is this, that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States are not merely the Bill of Rights. Truthfully, they are designated by the first Congress as declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution. Point being, this is where the people got to say, we want our say in the Constitution, and these are not just additions to it. This is a key part of the Constitution. And so I'll tell you this story, just so you're aware of what we're actually doing in Australia and in A1. And this allows us to focus on extremely difficult, intellectually challenging process of, let's just go back to that diagram there, where we take one of those elements of national power, and then we paint the picture in the context of a modern 21st century constitutional republic with an identity-first great power strategy. What can we do with geography to create a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western constitutional republic that is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, socially cohesive? So I do this. I've already done geography, and then we ask the question. We define geography. Then we work out what the core elements of geography are. Then we look at the sub-elements of geography. Then we look at policies that would deliver what we want, and then the constitutional statements required to authorize that. Then we go to natural resources. Then we go to population. As I said, we've just finished political organization and quality of government. And the next one to come out is leadership. Again, find leadership. What is the core element? What is the core essence of leadership? What's the strategic purpose of leadership? What are the sub-elements of leadership? What are the policies that we need to use leadership to create this national end state? And then what statements authorize that? And so it's a very slow, intellectually challenging process. It is so exciting and so important to elevate the thinking of the people so they can start thinking about what they want to create and how they can do it. And this is absolutely available, excuse me, to everybody. This is not just an A1 thing. Anybody around the planet should be thinking this way, because we must recreate our nations. Now, the United States is well in front of everybody else, but this is brand new for the rest of the planet. And some countries will move quickly on this, some won't. It's entirely, I guess, up to you. So there you go. Let me just now stop.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love that slide, and it really helped drive home the point that you were making before about, and we've had this conversation many times about morality being the main compass of a nation. You talked about, it's not just about GDP, it's not just about money, it's not just about profit, but it's actually about becoming a prosperous nation upon the foundation of your moral and cultural principles. Like, you're not going to do business with China, despite their vast manufacturing capabilities, if they're still engaged in human rights abuses. And that's a really great example of what you were talking about, how we reformulate, and in your case, what you're, hold on a second. Apologize for that call coming through there, but how we move forward in terms of understanding the structure of the new world that we're creating. It's not going to just simply be based upon this cynical idea of, how can we just make more money and acquire more power? Because that's exactly what these past several centuries have been all about in terms of the cabal. I mean, that's the world that they created. And that's exactly the world that we're trying to dismantle. And in order to do that, we have to build that foundation and rest upon our moral principles. And it ties back into what we were talking about earlier in terms of the truth, right? Because there's really no separation between morality and truth. So that was a great slide to really paint that picture there. Rick, I absolutely love this conversation as per usual. Is there any, I could talk to you all day, but I want to respect your time. I know you've got some stuff you got to do, but is there anything you want to say in closing before we wrap this up?
No, just thank you so much, Patrick. You're a good man doing a great job. You really are.
You are as well.
To your arm. Yeah, it's a real privilege to have met you like this. I can't wait to have a lemonade with you one day.
Yes,
but thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And the only thing I'd say to your viewers is get on to Australia One Party's Rumble channel if you're interested in this Rebirth of a Great Nation series. The qualities are a bit dodgy, particularly with the early ones, because they were hammering us. The recording quality is just bloody awful. But I'm driving forward relentlessly despite the interference. So have a look at it. If you like it, please look at it, please watch it, and share it around the world. The Australia One Rumble channel. That's it. You see that second box there with the big blue rectangle. That's episode 10, I think. Go through it, listen to it, get involved in creating your future, guys. I think I told the story last time when I was with Patriot. I was going through a terrible divorce and my life falling apart, and I stuck pictures on the wall of what I wanted just to give myself a focus. It was completely ridiculous, as I told you last time. What I put on the wall was just insane because I was in the depths of hell. I was smoking 2 packs a day, killing myself, basically trying to figure out what was going on in life. And I just put these pictures on the wall of everything I wanted. $400 million, traveling overseas for consulting, a happy family, blah, blah, blah. It was all a million miles away. 7 weeks later, I was in Milan drinking a grappa and a cappuccino and an espresso in front of Il Duomo in Milan. I couldn't believe my luck. So if you want to get through this, the best thing you can do, 1, pray to God. Pray to the God that Jesus prayed to. 2, Start designing your future. Decide what you want for your family, yourself, your family, the world. Doesn't matter. And you'll get so excited by it that it'll be like you're in a train and the countryside is whizzing past you, but you're heading to the destination a whole lot quicker and you're not stuck in the mire, so to speak. But that's it, Patriot, mate. Thank you so much. You're an absolute legend. Love our talks. Let's do it again soon. And thank
you're too kind, man. You are too kind. I have to say, you're the legend, and I'm just very privileged to have connected with you and developed a friendship with you. And certainly the audience are the beneficiaries of that. Anybody who hears Riccardo Bosi speak on any channel always walks away with something that they didn't know before, some deeper insights. And I'd like to think that our conversations do exactly that. So make sure you are following Rick once again on Rumble. That's Australia One. I actually just put the link in the description of the video, so you can just click on it and hit that follow button. One of the most important voices out there in the truth movement, bar none, and somebody that I have the utmost respect for. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We had a really great audience on Rumble. And as a matter of fact, on X, we have close to 1,300 live viewers on X alone. So a lot of people tuned in to watch today. Many more will watch the replay. Just want to say thank you to all of you for your amazing support, your continued patience with me as I'm going through everything in my personal life, but I'm doing the best I can to bring you folks high quality content. And today certainly was no exception. Also, just a reminder, make sure you check out that NMN product that I was telling you about from Black Forest in the beginning of the show. Just wanted to circle back to that, folks. It's a precursor to NAD+, and the FDA was brought to court by Black Forest and another organization that functions as an advocate for nutraceuticals and supplements, because the FDA wanted to make this a prescription drug. They wanted to control this so that you couldn't get your hands on it. So that probably should be an indicator for folks that this might be something you want to look into. Obviously, do your own research on NAD+. We don't have the time to get into all of it now, but a very, very high quality product. And the fact of the matter is they're running a special right now that is absolutely insane. You buy one bottle of anything in the store, you get another one free. And then on top of that, they're going to give you a free bottle of this NVM to try for yourself. So check out their website. Highly recommend. Just in closing tonight, in terms of what's in store, I'm planning to be on my good friend Mark Messina, aka 8-Track, his show, The 40,000 Foot View, on Sunday. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I've had Mark on my show a number of times, and he's just an amazing guy, great guest. And next week, I'm also going to be reuniting with a mutual friend of ours, Gene Decode. As a matter of fact, I remember I had both of you guys on at the same time once, and that was a banger of a show. That was quite a while ago. It's been well over a year, probably maybe even longer, that I've sat down with Gene. So I'm very much looking forward to getting his take on everything that is happening in the world. And then the following week, I'm going to be having Sheila Holm on the show as well. I got in touch with her recently, so that's going to be a new guest. She's very well informed. So lots of good content coming your way, folks. I really do appreciate it. Once again, we're going to sign off now, but once again, thank you everybody for listening. God bless and Godspeed to the next time. Patriot out.